Hi everyone, Brian here, wishing you a great Friday and a wonderful weekend ahead. This is the weekend when Church of Our Savior has its annual meeting, which is this year a particularly exciting Sunday to be around this parish. We've had a really challenging year in some ways, but out of that challenge has come some incredible leaps forward. So we're really looking forward to gathering together as a community at noon here on Sunday, right after the last service of the day, for lunch and for catching up on all the news. However, the church always gathers each and every week for good news. And I just want to read you the passage. We won't be hearing this translation on Sunday because this is Eugene Peterson, but in this particular reading from the Gospel of Matthew, Eugene Peterson captures the incredible joy, optimism, and resting into the magnificence of God that I think the original author of Matthew wanted to convey. It's a traditional, well, they're all traditional points, but this is a well-known passage from Matthew. It's the one that says, initially, you're the salt of the earth, but this one says you're the light of the world. And you'll recall that Jesus said you don't take a lamp and put it under a bushel basket, you put it on the top of a lampstand, and then shine your light into the world for the sake of others. One of the themes we're going to look at this Sunday is that I think far too often the church has placed that as a burden on people's shoulders, that, you know, it's full of stuff you've got to do. And especially on annual meeting Sunday, when we talk about all the things we got to do as a parish or get to do as a parish, I think it's a wonderful balance. So I'm just going to read this very short little paragraph. It's from the 5th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on the light stand. Now that I've put you there, on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. What I really love about that is perhaps summed up in those last few words, this generous Father in heaven, that this is what God is all about, that there's an enormous, loving, potent, divine generosity just pouring out to the world. Reminds me of a number of years ago when we were, I forget what the gospel was, but I dragged my wooden carving of a Chinese goddess of compassion named Kuan Yin into the church, and she's symbolized by holding up a water vase. And quite often she'll be presented as a fountain with the water of compassion just pouring out to a world below that is gaping with desire for this. And I love that symbol, and I made the comparison that we dole out God's compassionate communion with a tiny little piece of bread and a tiny little sip of wine. And even though, of course, traditionally we'd consider a statue of Kuan Yin to be an idol in the church, I almost think that we should have one of these in every parish that does sacramental Eucharist each week, just as a reminder that while we're just getting tiny little bites, and of course, you know, a lamp in a little hut in a peasant house in Judea or Galilee would have just been a tiny little light. Even though we're getting a tiny little piece of bread and a tiny sip of wine, it represents a gush of grace from God, an abundance about what life is all about, regardless of the circumstances of our life in that moment. And that's the astonishing thing, I think. So I hope to see everybody at church this Sunday, as many as possible. I know many of you will continue to monitor us on the YouTube feed that comes directly right at the time of the 9 and the 10:45 services. And of course, people are traveling and still filling out their Sundays in different ways as we all sort of recover lives and move forward after the most intense period of the COVID pandemic. But regardless of where you are on Sunday, I hope you grab onto this extraordinary generosity of God's grace. We'll be celebrating it at Church of Our Savior on Fullerton Parkway. You celebrate it in your own heart. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.